As the DCEU continues to find its footing, it gains a new member in Shazam. The red-suited hero with the young boy alter ego might have a familiar set of powers in the DC universe, but that's not the only thing familiar about the DCEU's newest member. Up until recently, he also went by a name that, by now, should sound familiar to even the most casual fans, Captain Marvel. Let's get into the story of how Shazam gained and then lost the title of Captain Marvel. The story of the Captain Marvel moniker is actually a pretty complex one. In Marvel Comics alone, there's been seven different people who held the title. The current Captain Marvel is one Carol Danvers, who made her record-setting mark on the Marvel Cinematic Universe recently with the release of her first movie before joining Earth's mightiest heroes in what's sure to be an epic conclusion to the MCU's Infinity Saga Avengers Endgame. Long before Marvel started passing around the title, though, there were others who used that name under different publishers before settling under the umbrella of the distinguished competition, DC Comics. No doubt, at least once in your life, you've had to listen to someone talk about the distinction between Frankenstein, the good doctor who collected the body parts of dead people to create a new creature, and his creation. While colloquially, the monster has been referred to as Frankenstein, he's actually the creation of Frankenstein. No one likes those guys. There's a similar issue for Billy Batson's superhero alter ego. For his entire run in DC Comics, the comic book of the little boy who became a superhero by saying a magic word has gone by the name of Shazam. But it turns out that Shazam is the name of the wizard who Billy evokes to become the lightning-firing hero who, until recently, went by the name of Captain Marvel. To understand why we now call him Shazam, let's take a look at the history of comics themselves. The story of the Billy Batson Captain Marvel starts in what's known as the Golden Age. The Golden Age began in 1938 when a baby from the dead planet Krypton lands on the Kent farm in Kansas and grows up to become none other than Superman. Prior to the arrival of the superpowered Boy Scout in blue tights, comic books were mostly just collections of syndicated comic strips and pulp stories. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster's creation changed the landscape, ushering in more legendary superheroes that continue to this day, including Batman and Wonder Woman. What does all of this have to do with Billy Batson's Captain Marvel? Oh well, we're glad you asked. Superman's popularity at DC led to other comic book publishers trying to get into this new superhero game with varying success. This included one shield-wielding, Nazi-punching super soldier at a little outfit called Timely Comics by the name of Captain America. Over at Fawcett Comics, another captain was created when a young boy encountered a wizard known as Shazam, who granted the kid a set of powers if he just said his name. He'd have the wisdom of Solomon, he'd have the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury. If you take the name of these mythical heroes, Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury, you form the acronym Shazam. Debuting in 1940, this creation of Bill Parker and C.C. Beck looked to capitalize on the popularity of DC's Superman. Like, a lot. Captain Marvel was a bulletproof, super fast, flying hero in a onesie with a cape. It turns out that this was a little too close for the big blue Boy Scout for DC Comics taste, so how close was it? Well, in his comic debut, the red Titan cape-wearing hero is depicted throwing a car at a ne'er-do-well, not unlike the famous cover of Action Comics #1, which features Superman holding a car over his head, ready to bring it down on a bad guy. Even Billy Batson, the boy who becomes Captain Marvel, had a job as the boy reporter for Wiz Radio. It was for a radio station, so it's totally different than the newspaper reporter Clark Kent, right? DC sued Fawcett for copyright infringement based on his similarities to their Kryptonian standard bearer. While Fawcett was able to drag the proceedings out for a few years, by the mid-40s, they finally relented, canceling their Captain Marvel and folding up their superhero game altogether. While that was it for Fawcett Comics, it wasn't the end for Captain Marvel or the people who would hold that title. When the Golden Age faded and comics turned to horror and pulp stories, a new age was on the horizon. This age would really kick off when an ambitious comic book creator at DC Comics teamed up with the likes of Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby to lay the groundwork for what would become Marvel Comics. That person was, of course, Stan the Man Lee. With titles like The Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, and the revived Captain America, the new Silver Age of comics was underway, and Marvel was at the forefront. Like the Golden Age, there was a rush to capitalize on the newfound popularity of superheroes. Enter a small publisher called MF Enterprises and their Captain Marvel. The name had fallen into the public domain after Fawcett had stopped using it. This Captain Marvel continued its borrowing ways, being an alien android sent to Earth to avoid the destruction of his own planet where his alter ego became a reporter. Sounds familiar, eh? Well, this Captain Marvel, however, didn't limit who it borrowed from to just DC's top hero. In one of his issues, he fought a character called the Bat who looked suspiciously like an early Batman, and another blue and suited stretchy guy not unlike Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards. They did a lot of borrowing is what we're trying to say, like a lot. The android powers, however, were ridiculous, even by comic book standards. When in trouble, he'd yell "split!" and then his limbs would separate and then attack his enemies while his head and torso directed them. This Captain Marvel lasted all of 5 issues before, as the story goes, Marvel Comics came by, eager to protect their name, and bought the name rights to make this limb-firing Captain Marvel go away. To protect a title like this, you have to use it. So, Marvel started releasing its own series of Captain Marvel, starting with the Kree soldier, Mar-Vell. Marvel kept the name alive, passing it on to various family members of Mar-Vell and different Kree. Mar-Vell's son, Genus Vell, took the title over after going by Legacy for a while, and then his sister, Phyla-Vell, took the title. A completely different Kree named Novar claimed the title for a bit. Even a brainwashed Skrull known as Connor was known as Captain Marvel at one point. That's KHNN''NR. Yeah, you figure that one out. Not a lot of vowels in space. It's not the weirdest thing a shape-shifting Skrull has been convinced they were. At one point, Reed Richards hypnotized a quartet of Skrulls into thinking they were cows. Yes, cows. The Captain Marvel title was held by a different Earth woman named Monica Rambeau before the Kree started passing it around. Moviegoers might recognize that name as the daughter of Carol Danvers' bestie in the recent Captain Marvel movie. Her mom goes by the call sign Photon, another moniker Monica used in the comics. Eventually, the title passed down to Carol Danvers. She had gotten her powers from a Kree explosion and then had been going by the title of Ms. Marvel until she took over the Captain role and made her way into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Back at DC Comics, in the early 70s, they were able to acquire the rights to the character that they once sued out of existence from Fawcett Comics. Billy Batson's Captain Marvel returned to comics, but there was a hitch. Now that title belonged to Marvel Comics. This meant that they could no longer refer to the character as Captain Marvel. The title of the comic book became Shazam after the young wizard Billy Batson evoked to become Captain Marvel. Briefly, they billed the comic as Shazam, the original Captain Marvel, but a cease and desist from Marvel forced the change to Earth's Mightiest Mortal. Now at DC, the Billy Batson Captain Marvel was more of a success. The Big Red Cheese was a lighter foil to the Big Blue Boy Scout Superman, squaring off more than a few times. He was even popular enough to land a double-bill TV show in the 70s. The show would feature Billy Batson traveling the country in a motorhome with his guardian mentor. The live-action show played on Saturday mornings from 1974 to 1977. The 70s saw a lot of superheroes on TV, including Wonder Woman, they got the Incredible Hulk, and then even a short-lived Spider-Man series. We have come a long way. But back to the comics. The two Captain Marvels, one at Marvel and one at DC, coexisted for decades. DC's Captain Marvel even got into the family business aspect of his title, dating all the way back to his Fawcett years. This includes his foster siblings Mary Bromfield and Freddie Freeman, who'd become Mary Marvel and Captain Marvel Jr. Wait, Jr.? Not Lieutenant Marvel? Alright. At Marvel, of course, the title was passed around quite a bit. Careful to protect their claim on the title, however, there was always a Captain Marvel somewhere. Over at DC, Billy Batson's alter ego remained a bit of a staple. With little to no reference of Captain Marvel's actual name, most people simply began to associate the name Shazam with the red-suited hero. In 2012, DC Comics went through another big house-clearing event that saw a hard reset of their marquee titles, including the various members of Batman's extended group, Superman, and Wonder Woman. With this hard reset, DC Comics finally gave in on their Frankenstein's monster issue with the big red superhero and officially changed his name to Shazam. With that, the two Captain Marvels came to an end. Now, years later, they both get their deserved time on the big screen. That's the story of the two Captain Marvels and how Shazam used to go by that name. With 9 different Captain Marvels, who's your favorite? Let us know in the comments, and then hey, while you're at it, make sure to subscribe to CBR and ring that bell for all the latest videos straight to your inbox. Thanks for watching.